Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and today I'm joined by Scott Uhls, and we're going to be talking about Maximum Apocalypse RPG, which is now on Kickstarter. Folks can find it. There are links in the pin post below. I was lucky enough to have a chance to play it. You guys can check out. Also, we have a live play game on the channel here that you can check out, which was a ton of fun. I should actually even add that to the list of links below, so you guys can check it out. But how are you doing today, Scott?
Doing pretty good. Pretty good. It's early morning for me. I just woke up. So.
Nice. So yeah, for us it's early afternoon still. Not too bad.
Noonish. Yeah.
So you've been all over the place running this game for people.
Yeah.
How many times have you run it since the Kickstarter has launched?
That's a good question. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. I think it's actually only been about 4 or 5 times. Like I really haven't ran it that much. But I ran it also like 6 times leading up to the Kickstarter. So like there's that too. Like people were like, okay, we'll record it, then we'll post it, we'll drop it like the day the Kickstarter starts or like the day after. So I've only run it like a few times, but I have been doing stuff like this like a lot of the time through it.
Yeah, so have you done a lot of the same scenarios, or are they all different?
Yeah, I've been trying to, because the thing is that like I didn't want. So okay, in my experience as a backer of a Kickstarter, like it's cool, but when it's like the only videos I have available are the same scenario over and over again, it gets really boring.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to make sure that throughout this whole Kickstarter, I've been running different scenarios, so that people from the Kickstarter page want to jump in and watch or whatever, that it's a different thing, or if they want to like come be a player, it's not something they've seen before. So I'm mixing it up. Like I don't think I've run the same scenario twice the whole time.
I guess also too, like I imagine after a bit you're gonna get bored. You're gonna get bored of running the same thing over and over again. So
yeah, well that's the ones that you find, the scenarios that are in the GM's guide. I ran those so many times leading up to the Kickstarter. But I was partially because I was testing them, and partially because like they were the only ones I'd written.
Mm-hmm.
And I also discovered here's a little note for anyone who maybe wants some advice on your like RPG, if you're making one, if you're a game designer. 4-hour scenarios are real cool. People like them, but people like more 2-hour scenarios. That's what people like more, a lot more than 4. While 4 may be the traditional number, 2 to 3 hours is actually the sweet spot to keep, especially new people who are trying out your system for the first time. Like 2 hours, 2.5 hours is probably your place where you're like, okay.
The sweet spot. Oh, also there's a difference between whether you're running that live or you're running it online.
Yeah, and I learned that from you. You had some good advice on that, and it was pretty. Like it changed up kind of how I did things. And then when we ran that game on your stream, like I think I did really. Like I felt really confident about that game session.
It was good. It's everyone enjoyed it. I've even talked to some people afterwards. They had fun. It was smooth, and you did an excellent job of ending right around the 2-hour mark, and the time management. It's like it's a whole other skill too. Like running games at conventions and running games online are very similar in the sense that it's not like when you're running at home, you just keep running until it's done, or you guys will just pick up next time, right?
Right. So part 2 will be the next time you guys come over, right? In 2 weeks or whatever, yeah.
So were you running many games online before?
Yeah, so I had converted. So here, the thing is that with the testing, I had my friends helping me out, but it's really hard to find players to try out a new game, like going to like the local game shop and being like, all right, people, come join. Like, gone are the days where there's like a community board where you post a thing up and then like you get a call randomly from some person who's like, I'm looking for a group, can I join your guys? Like that doesn't happen anymore. You got to post it on like Discord or Facebook or something. So I had one of my fraternity brothers. He wasn't from my chapter. He was from another chapter, but like a chapter that my chapter used to communicate with all the time. He messaged me when I was like, hey, I need to find people to test this out that live in the area. And he goes, hey, why don't you try this like group like Absolute Tabletop or this group One Shot group on Facebook and see if you can find people that way. And so in 2017, like right at the time that I was first starting to like alpha test the game, I started looking for players online, and yeah, it just became my go-to for finding testers and stuff. So yeah, I've been running them online for a couple of years.
It does make it a lot easier, and the Absolute Tabletop group is one of the best D&D groups I think that's out there as far as the community and the positivity.
Yeah.
It's kind of very tight knit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the One Shot group has been around for a while, and they've kind of just like, I think that group was archived for a bit, and then
It went
was
away
brought
for a little
back.
bit. There was some internal struggles amongst the moderators, and so they archived it for a while until they sorted that out, and then they brought it back.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when it was originally launched, in like 2014, 2015. I believe Juice had launched it, and then
Yeah,
it
that's what I heard.
switched hands a few times before that. Oh, you were recently talking to Juice, though. He
I
probably
was,
gave
yeah.
you the whole history.
He didn't actually. No, it was actually just like a more like organic conversation about like life stuff. We'd never met before or talked
Yeah.
before, so it was like, okay, well, who are you?
Yeah.
But he didn't tell me about that. No, it was one of the other people who had been in the One Shot group in the early days that was like, oh, Juice is like the OG.
Yeah.
If you go onto like my Discord for Maximum Apocalypse, you'll see if you go through the general chat, you go up a little bit till you find that video link for Juice. You'll see
Yeah.
the person be like, "He's the OG," like
He is the OG.
yeah. But it was good.
So-
And, the person I'm imitating right now, he's probably gonna watch this and be like, "That's not how I sound."
Well, if he's played any online games, we can find out indeed if he does sound like that.
He
or
does.
not.
He actually has his own Discord channel for his own game. You could go play that. It's called Gordnak. It's like an OSR style, like futuristic thing. You're like gangs on a planet fighting over oil, like sort of a mix between like Mad Max and like other Star Wars kind of stuff. It's pretty cool.
Oh,
It's
nice.
got mechs. It's got mechs in it, so that makes it fun.
So, for anyone that doesn't know, you want to give them the elevator pitch for what Maximum RPG is?
Yeah, so Maximum Apocalypse, the RPG, is the RPG. It's a D100 post-apocalyptic RPG based on a board game with the same name. It takes place in like our fallen world after the collapse of civilization, which is not that long ago. So it's not like a 1,000 years ago. I think it's like relatively recently. But essentially, all of the apocalypses that you could imagine, all the ones you've seen movies or books on, have happened, and they're all still happening. So everyone is a survivor in that, trying to scavenge stuff, craft their gear, maintain their things, and fight off all these monsters that are roaming around and trying to destroy the planet. And that's basically what it is. So you have to deal with like zombies and aliens and killer robot Terminator things in a Mad Maxian environment with kaiju and stuff. It just goes on. Like the list just continues. The amount of stuff in that. But that's essentially it. It's relatively easy. It's just a D100 roll for 99% of it, and then a few other dice on the side for like how many component pieces you put into a thing to craft something, or how much damage do you do.
Do you have a favorite apocalypse?
Some of them are easier and more fun to work with. The time paradox one is really fun to mess around with. Like, be like, all of a sudden someone's here and then they're over there. And, but I think I kind of tend to lean toward like the food riots and the Mad Maxian stuff, like the Pico collapse, just because those feel more apocalypsy to me, and so I can roll with that a lot more. Like this is a broken down car and this guy wants to rob you for your food units. Like those are easy for me to think about, and so those are the ones I tend to lean toward more.
Oh, well, I've seen you handle aliens pretty nicely and, zombies nicely, so.
Yeah, the thing with zombies, I think I don't remember where it was. Somewhere I read someone complain that zombies in games are often weak and boring, and I think that's always influenced that was very early on in this creation process, and I think that influenced how I feel about the zombies. In that I tried to make them not boring. And I was explaining this to Dead Aussie Gamer the other day when we were talking about zombies. I was like, the problem isn't that the zombies are weak. That's not what you worry about. Like, the zombies are weak. They're easy to kill. They're squishy. They've got low hit points. They move slow. But if you get 10 of them on you, right? When you go unconscious, you have this in the game mechanics. There's this thing where you start to die, and you have a period of time before people can try to revive you, and then you're okay. However, each time you take damage in that time, that time shrinks. And so if you've got 10 zombies over you who have 2 hit points each or something, and they just all hit you, that your time goes from here to here real fast. I was like, and that's where your problem is. That's what you have to worry about. And then getting infected with the Z virus. Those are your main concerns. So it makes them a little bit more problematic and then fun to deal with. You make them scary by simply being yeah, they hit you, man. You start to become one.
if you, yeah, it's not that zombies are weak. It's just they're used wrong. Like
they're
you're
used
not,
wrong, exactly.
it's zombies is about overwhelming odds. It's
Correct.
not about whether that particular zombie is tough to kill. No, it's the nine after him, like you said.
Right. Okay.
That is the problem. They're going to overwhelm you. They're fearless. They don't
Yeah.
have any sense of self-preservation.
Yeah, like the one zombie coming through the door of your safe house is no problem. It's the 20 behind him that you have to worry about. Because you only get to do so much in a turn, and they all get to do the same amount of stuff in a turn. So, you have one action and they have 20 actions. Like, good luck.
Yeah, it's like, and all the good, like, zombie tropes, whatever the medium is, it's one of the problems with zombies is that they're so easy to defeat, right? So what essentially happens, anyone who gets used to dealing with them over a long period of time, they become complacent.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So they're more likely to succumb to zombies just because they make a stupid mistake,
Right.
Because they don't respect the threat.
Right.
Working in heavy construction is the same way, right? Like the guys have been doing it for a long time. They don't respect traffic anymore. They're just, it's just part of their daily routine. They're used to cars whizzing by at 60 miles an hour. So they'll stand way closer to the edge of this construction zone than maybe you should, because if someone veers off by a foot, 6 inches, you could be paced.
Right, exactly. I mean, we had the place I work at. I actually work as a front desk concierge at a high-rise apartment building down in downtown Portland. And we had some contractors that were placing all of the glass, well, not all of the glass, but like a large percentage of the glass on the outside of our building, because the film inside that's not supposed to go bad went bad. So, there's a whole legal thing about that. But they were replacing all of this glass, and it was 90% of the way through the project, on the last side of the building and like the last set of windows, they dropped a panel. And you have to understand, we're not talking about like a 5-story building. We're talking like a 23-story building. So this thing dropped 6 floors and hit. Fortunately, we have an awning over our front door, so it didn't drop all the way to the ground and smash all over the sidewalk and injure people. It hit the awning and still sprayed down, but there was like it all went out in the street rather than on the sidewalk. But I have to imagine the only reason that happened was because they were 90% of the way through. They had done this 400 times and 500 times. They were just like, they put the panel up, and then some check thing that they didn't check off their box like caused it to drop.
Yeah,
suctioned well enough or something.
That's what happens most of the time. Yeah. So that's the true danger of the zombie, right? It's just
that's exactly right. Like, you didn't lock the door, you didn't put the third bolt on or something like that because you're so used to the 2 bolts holding it in, whatever.
We just watched Double Tap the other night. Yeah. They weren't following the rules. They missed the rule.
Right. That's what I mean. So that's exactly right. So like some of the apocalypses are easier to deal with, especially for game masters. But then I think each game master has their own feeling about them. So they'll one game master will lean heavily on aliens, another one will lean heavily on robots. That kind of thing.
Have you run the the Rapture one?
Yeah, I have. So I have included elements of the Rapture, but I haven't 100% leaned on the Rapture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been using a lot of, in the more recent tests and the more recent games, I've been using the supernatural horrors a little bit more. They were a little bit later to the monster manual, so I hadn't really tested them very much. So I've been using them a little bit more. They work out fine. But we just unlocked the Rapture monsters, so now I think I got to start writing Adventures of the Rapture monsters and then see how that goes. Because it was one of those, I wasn't sure if I was going to need to stat them or not. I don't know if it was going to come up, but it did. So now I have to make sure that stats all work properly and it's balanced right and that kind of thing.
So you're unlocking, with the stretch goals, you're unlocking the different monsters.
Yeah.
And how many monsters have you unlocked so far?
We've unlocked the yokai and the Rapture monsters. Those are the 2 that we've unlocked.
And what are the core monsters?
Of those particular apocalypse-y type monster things?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the yokai monsters are the stuff from Japanese traditional legends, the the kitsune and the kijo and the oni and stuff like that, right? So you essentially have they're essentially spirits and goblin things. They're very much basically supernatural horrors. But you have an oni is basically just a big goblin thing that has a big club and smashes stuff. But then you've got like the Kijo's like a witch,
Mm-hmm.
and so the has like powers, like supernatural powers to like make things happen. And the Kitsune is my favorite because the Kitsune traditionally they're like the foxes. They can change forms, and so they'll usually pretend to be like humans and then like lure people into traps and like take them out that way. So those are fun because you can easily like have somebody infiltrate a group or like be like, I'm an innocent little child, protect me, and then like actually secretly they're leading you to your death, So that's a little bit fun to play around with. And the one cool rule about them too is like in the Japanese mythology they have a number of tails. They like sometimes they have 1 tail, sometimes they have 10 tail or 9 tails, sometimes they have like 5 tails. So for the rule, what I did was like they have like low numbers. They're like not really dangerous by like as a 1-tailed fox, but then each tail you give it, you add 10 to all the stats. So like a 9-tailed fox is like really scary, and can turn into a human and lure you to your death. Like that kind of thing. So I guess like that one I think is gonna be like a fun one. I think that's gonna probably pop up in a lot of homebrew games quite a bit.
So the Rapture apocalypse kind of intrigues me. Well, like I figure like the Rapture happens, right? And like people are driving cars, they're flying planes, they're doing like this kind of stuff, right? What happened? Like the pilot disappears, right? And now all of a sudden there's no one flying the plane.
Wasn't it the Left Behind movie where they did that?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it was a movie that came out. I think it has Nicolas Cage in it even. I don't know. I'll have to look back. But anyway, it was a movie that was based off of the book series Left Behind, and that's what happens is the Rapture. And like in the movie, there's like a lot of things like that where it's like the train conductor is like, or the driver is gone, the pilots are gone, right? And so like these things just like crash, right? And that's like the destruction that happens in the world.
And then I guess like the other thing is kind of like if you follow what the Rapture is, that means everyone that is left is kind of shitty.
Yeah, and
in
that's
theory.
like that's essentially at the core of the movie. Like there are people that are having like life problems, like what you and I would consider like general life problems.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, when the Rapture happens, they're still around, which means their life problems apparently offended God, right? Like that's the idea. And so yeah, it's like, that's weird. But yeah, no, and that's the same thing. So like there has been a joke in the times where pre-generated characters have popped up at like conventions and stuff that are like survivors of the Rapture. Like there's like there was one that was a priest survivor of the Rapture, and like everyone else around the table just kind of went, so you were a religious follower and you didn't get taken up. What's in your past, friend?
Actually, that one surprises me the least. So
yeah, it was pretty funny. It's like that little like back and forth of the players kind of becomes really interesting to see like the role play out, where it's like I don't know, I'm 15, I should really just stay away from the priest. I'll be over here now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean that one also I imagine just requires some discussion at the table as to what folks want in their game and don't want in their game.
Yeah, it leads to that session 0 sort of like consent conversations kind of stuff, and that's totally fine. And it, like usually it plays out all right. I'll be honest, like I don't do a session 0 all the time. Like I do it a lot of the time. Well, I do it enough times, or times when I think it might come up, like with the Apocalypse. Because it was a group of female players and then me. I was like, well, let's have a session 0. Let's make sure everything's all good and on the up and up, and I don't do something accidentally in the game session that might offend you guys or might like offend you ladies at all. So I did that and it worked out fine. It was actually like probably the most easy conversation to have, because I don't like to like lean into the stuff that might be problematic. Like if something is slightly problematic, like if it's like there's like problematic, there's like survival problematic, like this guy left the door unlocked problematic, versus like the conversation we're having, like the session 0 necessity, the X cards, things like that. I don't like to go into that territory, so I just try to avoid it. Like if it comes up, I like redirect the game back. So usually I don't have those, only because I just make a line in the beginning, like we're not gonna cover those topics. That's just not gonna be on the table. So let's avoid those.
Yeah, sometimes there's things that are kind of problems for people that we don't think about sometimes, which I've discovered.
True.
Like we just did a session 0, and one of my players just happens to be Hindu, and they're like, "Hey, can we not have violence against cows?" I'm like, I don't know that was going to be a thing, but sure, that's not an issue. And I'm like,
That's true.
And it does make me think now, where do Minotaurs fall in that?
Yeah,
So
that is true. I do remember I was running a Call of Cthulhu game. I was prepping for the conventions that got canceled, but because I do a lot of volunteers like Cult of Chaos, Chaosium stuff, at, like especially the local convention where there's only like 5 Call of Cthulhu GMs in Portland apparently, and so they always have to like import people from like Seattle and stuff to come down to the Portland convention to run Call of Cthulhu. But I was like, I was gearing up for that, and I ran 4 hours to Reno, and there's this suggestion in 4 hours to Reno, like there's a spell that can be done to like disconnect some things, unsummon stuff, kind of stuff, and it requires like a living victim, like a living creature to be sacrificed. And the adventurer sort of implies that one of the NPCs who has this little yappy Chihuahua dog, like the players could like kidnap the dog and use the dog, right? Well, I was like, no, that's not going to be a thing. But in the scenario when we were running it, like in the adventure, it came up. They realized that they needed a living victim, and somebody said, "Well, why not the dog?" And one of the players like immediately was like, private message to me like, "Hey, listen, if we're gonna use the dog, like I'm gonna have to like go away for a little while. Like I'll just AFK for a bit because I don't like my dog just recently died, and like I don't want to like And I was like, don't worry about that. I was like, don't worry, it's not gonna be a thing. Like I'm gonna be like, even if they go hunting for the dog, they're not gonna find it. Like that's gonna be fine. Like don't worry. They're not gonna be murdering the dog on my watch. That's fine.
yeah.
But I could see that. I could see that being a thing. And with Call of Cthulhu, like sometimes that kind of stuff comes up because it's a horror game. So you gotta try something scary. You just gotta survive.
But you just never know what people have gone through.
Yeah, you never know. You never know what, because like that was the thing. Like the dog dying, that legit makes sense. Like I could see why that would be a problem for someone.
So when I started thinking about it, I was like, so can I use Minotaurs? And I'm like, now I want to make a because the game we're playing is setting that I call Quarter Worms, and it's like this valley that's ruled by these dragon emperors that are like these like celestial beings almost, and the main races are all reptilian humanoids. So now I want to do like a rhinoceros iguana minotaur thing. And replace the Minotaur with a new monster, and lore that's similar but not quite the same.
But not a cow, right?
Yeah. So sometimes these are opportunities that we can use for inspiration.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or like you could change up and have like a Minotaur that's like trying to be like the savior of all cows, and like all cows in captivity, he's trying to release them and be free. And it's like, that's an interesting story arc. So then maybe the players end up helping the Minotaur like rescue all the cows, right? Like maybe that's the thing.
Where instead of the cows being a food source, they're more of a domestic pet, like dogs,
right.
like
dogs. Yeah. Like, this is maltreatment of cows. You're right. This is true.
So sometimes things go in unexpected directions. Yeah. So this is going to be your first credited game as far as a designer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, you have a bit of an interesting journey here, going from kind of like player to designer. You want to touch on that a bit?
Sure. I mean, I think like if people are following some of the videos I've posted, you'll hear the story over and over again. But essentially, like, it was a matter of like, I was just a Kickstarter backer. I was like your average everyday Kickstarter backer. It was like my third Kickstarter backed ever period. And I was just like, this sounds cool. Like as a GM, you like a dungeon master or anything, you sort of create your world a lot. Like you do a lot of like, I'm gonna make this thing here, and I'm gonna write this map or like this stuff, and then I'm gonna do this monster. You kind of design a little bit on your own anyway, like within the context of the rules. But then I was like, this is really a cool world that this board game Maximum Apocalypse has created. Like all these different apocalypses going on, robots, monsters, aliens, zombies, stuff. And I was just like, hey, like I could, like, you should make this into an RPG. And I was like, for whatever reason, I just felt like moved to like message Mike and be like, hey, like, like all of the well-meaning people on our Kickstarter that are giving us ideas, same thing. It's the same thing. It's like, hey, this idea is really cool. Like, I'm really excited for this. Why don't you try? adding dice or something, and it was like that. I was just like, hey Mike, like this is a really cool world, like have you ever thought about making it an RPG, right? And he was like, I've played like half a game of Pathfinder, I have no idea how to do that, it's just not my world. And I was like, well, I've been doing it for 20 years, like I'm the expert, right? Before I got humbled and was like, I am not an expert, but I was like, I'm the expert, I know all the things, I can make that for you. And so I just went ahead and started making it. And I like the beginning, like when you finally commit, like I'm gonna make a thing, I'm gonna make a game, I'm gonna design it. It's like there's like a rush where you're like, oh cool, I can do all the cool things of this big open palette in front of me, I can like draw all this stuff. The trick is actually to continue doing that, because a lot of people get to that point, they get all excited and they start writing a bunch of stuff down, and then it drags on and they don't ever like get to a conclusion, and they don't test any of it, and like years pass and they're still working on it, like that kind of thing. That happens a lot. I think there's a lot of that going on out there. But I was like, all right, now that I've made some basic rules, some first sets of rules, I think I did like a Reddit where I was like, hey, would you guys even buy a game like this, right? And like I got people coming back, they're like, rah, 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 rah. And it was actually good, because it was like really hard questions that I actually had to ask about the game, like what makes it different, how, like what are the things people are going to want to do with it, what are the key things it does that people will go, we want to do this thing, so we're going to play this game. And so I then just made a little bit, and then went out and grabbed all my friends that were willing to let me drag them into a game and tested it. And that's when I found out that like I wasn't an expert. But it was, it was really cool to like make stuff, like have my friends play it, tell me what they liked, tell me what they didn't like. And then, when I stretched out and started reaching out to far, when I had more rules, and I reached out to the people on the interwebs and grabbed all kinds of different people from all kinds of backgrounds. Like everyone that gave me feedback had something to add, something that either was like something I needed to change about the rules, or something that I could improve, like to go farther on that rule because they really liked it. And one person, she chewed me out for not making it very roleplay friendly. It was very much more like dice rolling and not a lot of roleplay in the beginning, especially when she tested it. And it was intense. Like I was really like, when she was chewing me out, like I felt like I was a whole new butthole was being opened on my body. Like that's what it felt like. But like I listened, and like I started like responding to what she was saying to me, and then like it started, like she calmed down and she was like thing, and then I went, she was, we got to a point where like her main conclusion, and then I went back and reworked some stuff, and then it came back, and now you've seen where it's at. And there's definitely opportunities to role play with it now.
So what kind of changes did you add to make it more role play friendly?
Well, one thing is that taking away a necessity for certain roles certainly helps. Like you don't need to roll for everything, right? That's the thing, and you hear that all the time, but you forget about it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was one thing, but then also like there were a few other types of rolling, or like teamwork was a little bit more complex and stuff like that. That I scratched, like I took out, because it slowed everything down. It made more roll time and less role play time, as it were.
Okay.
Streamlined some of the combat process to like speed that up so that it was faster and therefore ended quicker, so you get back to the like hunt around and look for stuff and scavenge and build things. So that's like I basically cut out some rules, and I added like the concept that like rules only, like you only need to roll for stuff that like had like dramatic reasons, where failure mattered, kind of stuff.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
I think people might have come to that conclusion anyway if they're like experienced game masters, but like without sort of making the rules reflect that, they might have felt like, oh, I got to stick to the rules, which means because this person got hit, then they get to make a resilience roll to like shrink down the damage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
People definitely fall into that. If there's a rule for it, they have to follow it.
Right.
So that does trip some people up. Brian's got a question. I haven't seen the game played, but the description mentions it's a board game. Can you outline basically the board game elements versus the tabletop RPG elements?
Sure. So the board game is got tiles that you move pieces around the tiles. It's like if you've ever played Betrayal in the House on a Hill or something like that. It's very similar, where you move from tile to tile, and they flip over and you find out what they are and like the stuff that happens, and then at the end of your turn you roll to spawn monsters, and then you scavenge something. You like go to a place, you can scavenge one card, and then that goes into your hand and you can use it. It actually lends itself pretty well to role playing in the board game alone, but it doesn't go far enough. Like it doesn't go all the way into the role play universe, which is where the RPG comes in. The difference in the board game, you just have a card. You pick a character type. You just got a card, and it's got a special ability, and it's got health. But in the RPG, you actually make the character. You build the character from like 0 to where it ends up being based on your choices on how you want to do it. And the apocalypses that are in the world influence how your character develops. So the character is much more of like your customed character rather than just the character card with special ability. So that's a major difference. But then like some of the things like the scavenging and crafting stuff, the whole system of like taking the pieces that you find and like turning them into things, that's all RPG related. That's all story driven stuff where it's like, all right, I want to get this particular item and I haven't found it. Scavenging out of the box, like I gotta scavenge to get the thing that I need. Versus the RPG where it's like, okay, I've got these bits of like random junk. I'm going to duct tape these all together, and suddenly I have the thing that I need, which makes it a lot more story oriented that way. But you still have the aspect of like, I'm gonna go scavenge and I'm gonna go pick up stuff and maybe find some things, maybe find some spare parts. And then I'm gonna and I have those. So those two link, so where you're kind of doing the same action, but there's a little bit of a difference because you can go in a different direction to develop more of your imagination rather than what the board game is telling you is the case.
So on the board game too, isn't that when you play through, you're playing a specific apocalypse?
Yeah, you're playing one apocalypse. There are some later rules that Mike added where you can mix apocalypses, but generally you're playing one apocalypse at a time. So you're only dealing with aliens, and you're only dealing with zombies, you're only dealing with robots.
Now with the RPG, you're less beholden to that.
Yeah, you could do whatever you want. Like,
yeah, you could play that, right? I think it would be fun either way.
Absolutely.
Where you did a alien campaign or whatever, or you know, the games that I've played in, like everyone's had different backgrounds, so there is different events happening. So I mean, that would be cool as a campaign, like starting to kind of like hammer out why. Why is it a kaiju, alien, rapture?
Right.
Why is it all going on at once?
Right. And the board game has missions. So you do like each time you play the board game, you have like a mission card and you're trying to fulfill the mission. And so it's like the mission is get all of the fuel and get to the van, right? Or the mission is go kill like every type of zombie, so one of each type of zombie, and you extract the DNA, you bring it back to the scientist. Like those are like the missions that you're doing in the board game. And in this, that's all like, those are all maybe scenarios or objectives in a campaign that you're like, okay, we're going to go out, we're going to kill every type of zombie we find and bring the DNA back to the scientist, who's then going to create a cure, which we then have to take to the alien ship to like, spread out into the atmosphere by having them spray it out of their fuel or something. And it becomes like a thing where you're like, those it expands well beyond what the original intent of like the board game missions are.
So, do you have any campaigns going on? Any like long-term campaigns going on, or has it been all like shorter in order to just test?
So I ran a test campaign for a little while. It was not as long. I am probably the worst person for campaigns. I have like this weird limited time of gaming, so I tend to do more one-shots or like I'm in an Alien game right now where we're on session. We've done 3 sessions. We've done 3 sessions. And we're going to do a 4th, probably a 5th session. And it just keeps going like that. But I don't think it's going to stretch more than like 7. But so I do like sometimes like that. But a lot of the time I do like one-shots more than anything. But I did run a playtest campaign that was, I want to say it was 10 sessions with a couple of little mini ones for like specific campaign tests, like rule testing in the middle. So we ran like 10 sessions, I believe is what it was. It's 12 total with like the little mini ones. And I was testing prolonged things, like they never found food, like they were just slowly starving, to test like the hunger rules, right? Like it's like they could never find food no matter what they did. They were like, I don't find any food. Oh, that sucks. Like they found like maybe 1 food unit or 2 food units, but like amongst like 5 people, that's like great, cool. One of us gets to eat today. But like just testing like the effects of prolonged like food shortages and things. So I don't have any currently going because I was testing how the campaign would work, and then when I got to the point where I was like, okay, I think we've figured out how the campaigns play out based on these rules and changes I had to make a campaign work better. I think we're done.
So is that how the cannibalism rules came about?
I mean, yeah, kind of actually, like a little bit. They came out of that. Yeah, it came out of that and like a one shot where somebody was like, "Can I like carve up the dead guy that we just killed and get food?" And I was like, "I mean, yeah, I guess you wouldn't not be able to carve up the dude. So I guess sure, if you want to eat long pig, fine, why not?"
It's funny. I remember we did a session 0 social contract for a game, and that was one of the things that came up. No cannibalism.
Like, I mean, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. What have you been doing that cannibalism came up? But apparently, so this.
If it's an apocalypse game, you would imagine that cannibalism fits in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's a default instead of.
Yeah, that's sort of like one of the hidden secrets behind the food riots. Like that's why like one of the special abilities if you survive the food riots is to be able to fight off 2 people at once. It's because they were trying to eat you.
Yeah. That would make sense in a horrible way.
Yeah.
So how many versions of the game did you have to go through until you finally got to where you were happy?
A lot. I mean, I don't even remember. I remember that like each I was keeping track, or as like version 2 or version 1.5 because I only changed like one thing. And then at some point I just stopped paying attention to it and I just started putting the date on it. So it'd be like version 3/26/2018. Like that's what I just started doing.
Designer log.
Yeah. It became like a track. It was more of a time tracker. And that partially had to do with like when I was sharing it back and forth with like Mike and Todd, like I wanted to make sure I was giving them the right version rather than like accidentally sending their like a previous version.
What was it always a D100 system?
It was always a D100 system. That was like the first thing that I came to the conclusion, like what is the core dice rule that I want to revolve this around? And I've played a bunch of different games, you know, and I feel like I gravitate more toward the D100 systems because I like them better. And so I thought, well, I like it a lot, so I think it'll be easy for me to design the rules based on something that I like a lot. Rather than something that I don't necessarily like. Because if I hate like the core aspect of a dice system, then I'm gonna have problems creating rules for it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, that
that
makes sense. Why would you create rules, you know, and use mechanics that you don't actually like? So.
Right. Exactly. So like I was like, well, I like this, so I'm gonna start with that, and that's gonna be my base, and like work from there.
Yeah. It gives you a nice big swing, you know, as well, where the D20. Is, you know, isn't very, you know, there's not a lot of swing to it, so it's going to be all modifiers.
Yeah, and with the D100 too, like when it came to like how do you create characters, right? That became almost easy. Like deciding how characters were created was like probably I think the second easiest decision I made in making the game. I was like, all right, this is what's going to happen. They're going to make a series of choices. Each choice is going to increase or decrease their stats a certain percentage, and that's how character creation is going to go, and it worked.
So Brian wants to know, were there any apocalypse scenarios you ended up scrapping? If so, why?
I don't remember any like in the early stages that I just said, nah, that's not really an apocalypse. I think I was just kind of open to anything being an apocalypse. I mean, the board game already had like 6, so I was already working with a decent amount. So I was like, well, you know, what's missing here? You know what's missing? Mad Max is missing, so we'll do a Pico collabs. You know, food riots are missing. Definitely going to be a thing. Time paradox. Why is there no time paradox apocalypse, right? Like, I've seen The Returner. I know how this works. If anyone hasn't seen the movie, it's a really great Japanese film that involves a time traveler who's trying to stop an alien invasion. So it's like Maximum Apocalypse, the movie. So it's cool. But no, I think the only one that came up a little bit later was somebody brought up a specific viral apocalypse rather than the zombie apocalypse. And that one, like they explained it to me. I think it was at Origins. They were describing it to me, and I just thought about it, and I was like, well, but it sounds like you're basically describing the Z virus that causes zombies, but without it causing zombies, it just causes death. And they were like, yeah, I'm like, okay, but there's already a virus that turns you die, and then you come back and try to kill your friends. That's already scary enough. I don't think I need to add you just die. That seems like less scary. But so that was the only one that I think like I just axed that, threw it out. And it's almost a good thing I did because then, you know, right now we're
that we're living it
around. Yeah, like, but I just thought that the Z virus sounded like a scarier version of the same virus, so I thought that there's no reason to have a double virus apocalypse, you know.
Yeah, to the pandemic and yeah, and also I guess the food riots and the the big oil collapse kind of falling out in that area too, where the villains, the bad guys, are just going to be people, pretty much.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, yeah. There are. I will say that there are some that I folded into each other. So in the board game, the yokai are their own apocalypse, and in the RPG, they are part of the supernatural horror apocalypse because they're supernatural entities.
which
And then also,
I was just going to, which could be like Cthulhu, could be whatever.
yeah, and Cthulhu also falls into the supernatural horror. There are Cthulhu monsters again in the board game. That's its own apocalypse, the Cthulhu apocalypse.
Yeah.
And in this one, I was just like, that's still just supernatural. And Cthulhu borderlines aliens anyway, so it's either supernatural or it's aliens. So either way, it you can use it either one. I'm like, so I didn't need to make a special one for the alien supernaturals.
And I also feel like it touches on kaiju a little bit as well.
Yeah. And we're gonna so dinosaurs may be a monster that comes up if we get through the stretch goals. Like we're talking about adding them as a stretch goal.
Okay.
If so, then that's when we think that we're basically thinking that that's when we'll also make kaiju, because we don't right now have kaiju stat out. They're kind of like god level. They're like hurricanes. You don't have to stat a hurricane. It blows everything down.
Yeah.
But we may put stats to kaiju if we get to the dinosaurs, just to make that like an extension. Like dinosaurs and kaiju are like reptilian things that are rolling around killing stuff. So just maybe put them together. Because then basically T-Rexes become kaiju, right? Like giant, abnormally large-sized T-Rexes.
Well, one of the things that's kind of interesting, and I'm just thinking about it now, is because there's a lot of overlap, you could have like one apocalypse, but the survivors approach it differently, right? So you have Call of Cthulhu, or you have Cthulhian horrors. Well, one survivor could treat it as aliens, another treats it as supernatural, and the third is treating it, as kaiju. But but it's really one apocalypse as one threat.
Yeah, that was actually something that came up in one of the recent games that I run, like very recent, where there was like a person, there was like a survivor of like supernatural horrors, or not supernatural horrors, like the Rapture or something. And there was like a priest. And yeah, so they weren't a priest. They had survived the Rapture, and so they were like angels and demons, and like that stuff's real. Except that they didn't believe. They were skeptics, so they're like, I don't know what it was. People from the sky coming down, taking people up, and so there was this. They were dealing with like aliens, and they were having this debate as to whether it was aliens or angels. And it was like the one side was like, well, it's clearly aliens and spaceships. The other one's like, but maybe angels because they came from the sky. And that's happening. And I think they had that same discussion and debate on the Not Great RPG when they were running our game. They were having like the same kind of thing. And I brought that, like they did, yeah. And in the chat, I started singing, I started putting the lyrics to Come Sail Away.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got that third verse, I thought that they were angels, but to my surprise, right? I just started typing that out. It's yeah. They had that same debate. And I was like, yeah, right. That's exactly how that would play out. And it literally could just be one apocalypse, but everyone's approaching it from a different direction.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of and these are the kind of questions if you're running a campaign as opposed to one shots that you're probably going to really have to flesh out, and it is going to start coming up in your games.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's the cool way that the characters' backgrounds all interact with each other, and that would be the way that the role playing, a lot of the role playing would start happening.
It adds a lot. It adds more nuance to it,
yeah. As
opposed to just the idea that everything is just out to destroy the Earth at once,
right.
Which could be a little weird. Dinosaurs, where you're talking about how that could kind of lend itself and lean into the kaiju, but also obviously that's time paradox.
That's obviously time paradox. That's where I originally imagined that came in.
Yeah.
In the board game, there is no time paradox. There's just dino apocalypse, right? And I was like, yeah, well, that doesn't make sense. But there is hinting from Mike and Todd that there's going to be time travel in the expansion that comes out next year.
I kind of disagree because look at all the Jurassic Park movies.
That's exactly what Mike's intention was with the board game.
Yeah.
The dinosaurs come along with the adventurer archetype, the adventurer character.
Yeah.
And you have dino eggs and stuff. And that's sort of what he was imagining was this Jurassic Park style thing.
Yeah, what if Jurassic Park happened on a much wider scale, and then
like it's helped destroy the Earth, right?
Yeah. I mean, it went pretty poorly just in a little small island.
Yeah. Right. So there's no like specific dino apocalypse as one of the apocalypses you choose, like as in the core rules right now. Like maybe in an expansion we have a dino apocalypse. But if we get to the dinos as like monsters, we'll still add them to the monster manual, and like also that's what we're talking about, like maybe, and then also adding kaiju as like statted monsters, but like stats will be bizarrely crazy. Like this kaiju has a 400 strength. That means they every time they do a thing, they automatically have a critical success. Like it's like really weird.
Yeah.
Like, amazing success is anything I roll is an amazing success.
As long as they don't roll a 0-0, everything.
As long as they don't roll a 0-0, then they'll just smash whatever they're dealing.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. They'll be like crazy stats.
That's how kaijus work.
But it's a kaiju, right? It can knock over a building. It's like, it's going to roll to succeed to see if it knocks over a building. Oh, it totally knocks over the building. Of course it does.
Like, the only way it doesn't knock over the building is if it trips and falls in a different direction, probably knocking over other buildings.
Other buildings, just not the one it intended to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elfbait wants to know what about a nanite plague?
That would nanites, right? Depends on who's controlling them. If you're talking like robot style nanites, so that would just fall into the robot apocalypse. That would be a cool thing as a GM you could totally do. Use nanites because they would they would respond to like in the robot uprising, essentially the robot sentient virus created the robots all to be sentient, so they can make their own decisions, but they can also respond to like a central processing unit, which would cause them to be faster, which is why robots are faster. That's what it boils down to. If you were like, yeah, the nanites, like they're sentient and also trying to destroy humanity, like it would fall into the same category, right? And this is, so I'm not talking down, that's actually a really good idea of nanites. I like that. But like this is why this maximum apocalypse, this is where it happens sometimes. There's so many apocalypses that sometimes you're like, this is a really great idea, and it just falls right into one of the apocalypses. You're like, great, roll with that, man. Make that in your game.
And also, right, nanites could also be the Z virus.
They could also be the Z virus,
right? But it could be the Z virus caused by the robot uprising. So again, now we can have like the same apocalypse, but our survivors are looking at it a different way.
Mm-hmm. And you've just walked into why I really like Maximum Apocalypse system. After I finished it and started playing around with it, I was like, this is basically just a big toolbox for the game masters to do all kinds of crazy stuff.
This is great. I'm a genius.
Yeah. that's what happened. I was like, I'm not just saying I made a great game, but this is a great game, like that. But no, I do think it's like a big toolbox that like game masters can use and do stuff like that. They're like, I want to throw nanites in. Okay, cool. What do they do, and how does that fall in? Like, you can make it work. Like, it's easy.
Have you thought beyond Maximum Apocalypse as a game designer?
Yeah, I have.
Nice.
Don't tell my wife.
It'll be our little secret. Be you and the internet.
Me. Yes. Yeah. No, for sure. Like, I've thought about other games. I actually accidentally created one in a day. It wasn't an accident. It was just like I had this like inspiration in the morning on my way to work, and I just wrote it all out. And then when I typed it out, because it was still it was preoccupying me. I typed it all out. It's like 8 pages, but it's a full like system. Like, there's maybe some wonkiness here or there, but like for the most part, it works fine. And so I did I've done one test with it, and the test worked smoothly. Like nothing, there was no real issues. Everything made sense. We had a good time. The only problem is it might be a little bit hard on like campaigns, but it's supposed to be like a very rules light zine style game. So I have actually created one that I may pop out sometime next year, depending on how things go with my life.
Nice. Well, I've kind of discovered there's like 2 different types of people when it comes to design. Like, some people will make one game and just tinker with that for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I know those people too.
And some people and then there's other people that make a game and be like, I made that game, I'm done. And they're looking for they're always looking for the next game to make. Right. And then you got people that are kind of like falling between.
Yeah, I mean, you basically have like, I don't know, I'm Gary Gygax, I guess. I don't know if he made anything outside like the various versions or reskins of D&D. I don't know if there was anything. I'm going to be fair, I don't know a tremendous about his history. I know some. I read the comic book life story of Gary Gygax. If you haven't read that, it's pretty fun.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Yeah, there's somebody made an illustrated biography of Gary Gygax.
Lots of Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah, and And so there's that. So maybe there's that. But then you also have, on the flip side, you have like Sandy Peterson, who's like, I'm gonna make like 20,000 games, or
Yeah.
Monty Cook, who's like, I'm gonna make 20,000 games. Like,
Yeah, I've seen people even like a little more extreme than that, where it's just like they just pump out a different game, different mechanics, and they just like they just like the design aspect. I
yeah,
think more than the actual playing the game aspect. So
right.
they're always like looking to make the next new thing that they just because they want to tinker with it.
Right. They're like, I've done with this one. I'm gonna move on to the next one and see how I can make something else that's drastically different. Like maybe it's a zine that's 8 pages instead of like a 300-page like monster manual and game master guide. So.
No, I mean TSR did they did Gamma World, Star Frontiers, Top Secret, so they like started going into all the different genres.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I knew Gamma World, but Gamma World to me kind of felt like it was like a post-apocalyptic D&D.
Yeah,
that was just my feeling on it.
Yeah, to a certain extent, a lot of them kind of were a little bit like that with class, race systems, but I think Top Secret was a bit different with the mechanics. Like they did get away from that a bit, and I also don't know what hand Gary Gygax had in those different games as well.
For sure, yeah, he may have been like, "Cool, you guys go make those, and we'll produce them."
Yeah, possibly. Well, at that point too, like anyone who's done anything, like you quickly begin to realize when you turn it into a business, you end up doing all these things that have nothing to do with that thing that got you started in the first place.
Yeah, I mean that was like chapter 3 of the illustrated biography of Gary Gygax. There was a point where he just got tired of the business side and was like, you know what, I don't know, like I'm not even making games anymore. Like this isn't even fun. Yeah, sort of thing. So.
Yeah, if you ever want to turn your passion into a business, then you either need someone that does that, or you need to like that stuff at least a little bit because it's going to be part of your life no matter what.
Right. Once you've like, I've put a business stamp on this. Now it's a business, right?
Yeah.
You have to do business management. That's what my wife. She just started a project where she's selling, like, she's trying to do this crystal selling. I think I was mentioning that to you.
Yeah.
Crystal selling and like dice bags. She's like making the bags and they're really cool. She wants to sell them online, and it's like she's super into like crystals and stuff. And now she's like got a lot, and she's like, oh, I don't want any more crystals. Like there's so many. I'm like, well, you have to sell them, so you have to order more. And you have to sell them and order more and sell them. And she's like, it's clear that like. Where her passion was all in this thing, it's now kind of like her passion for it shrank a little bit. Only it's just like manage an inventory of them, and like even if she really likes it, if it's like she could sell it for like $300, she's like, well, I should sell it. That's like a $200 profit. So like that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, but then it's not even that. It's like all the social media you end up having to doing. And...
Yeah, she's had to make like 2 different social media pages, and she's like, man. Fortunately, she has a husband who has learned, thanks to all of his work trying to make a game, how to make banners and stuff. And so she has been able to lean on me to like make like some of her social media, like her banners and her logo and things like that.
Yeah, that stuff's a lot of fun. And you're like, why is this banner not sizing right for this place over here, but it works over here?
The one I made didn't work for Facebook. It works totally for Instagram. Doesn't work for Facebook. What happened? Like, Etsy. But it doesn't work for Facebook, so I had to like make a new one for Facebook.
And then sometimes you'll put in the exact measurements that they say, and it still doesn't work.
Still doesn't work
because you need like padding on either side, and so much fun.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, what is one of your biggest takeaways from putting together your first RPG game?
Biggest takeaways. Well, first off, it's like more and less work. It's weird to say. Like it was more work, but also less work than I was expecting. There was things that I thought I was gonna have to do more of, and I turned out I didn't have to do any of. And I think to some extent that may be because I was leaning on Mike for parts of it. Like being able to like have a company to like that picks up the product or is rolling the product makes it a lot easier. I will say that. So I do say I'm lucky that I'm working with the guys at Rock Manor, because I know there's a lot more stuff I'd have to do. So I'm not a 100% perfect designer. There's other designers out there like, he didn't have to do any of his own marketing. I did a lot of my own marketing, but I also could have Mike be like, oh yeah, hey, Todd knows the guys at Nerdarchy. Like, we'll introduce you. Like that was, thanks, that's great. But there was also like, there was a lot of testing that I wasn't expecting. I thought like, oh, I got to test it, but turns out you have to test a lot. You have to do a lot of like, you can make something, you can just make something and put it out there, no testing whatsoever. But what I've discovered is that when you do that, you create something that probably will cause conflicts for many of your potential market. Like your customers that you want to pick up this product may not like it. Like you just there was a game that I backed on Kickstarter. They sent out the rules, the test rules, and trying to play it was like, it was terrible. And so after like I kind of poked and prodded them a bit, and then they finally admitted that they did only minimal testing. They didn't do like a lot of testing. I was like, yeah, that explains a lot of this. Like, yeah. But like I had to there was times when I thought I had like, okay, these rules work fine, and then someone would come along and just blow them away, and they'd be like, all right, that did not work at all as I intended. And maybe it was good, but a lot of times it was like, okay, that made things a lot more complicated. People stopped having fun. People wanted to walk away from the table. So I got to change that. Well, like as an example, if you look at the monsters now, when you guys get a hold of it, if anyone gets a hold of it, or if anyone plays in any of the games this weekend at the convention that's going on online, virtual gaming con, wink wink, some of the monsters, like the aliens, still have the ability to their exoskeletal armor will make a resilience roll to reduce the damage and take the basically self-heal, right? The original rules of the game, everybody did that. Players, monsters, everybody. And what ended up happening was that combat would take forever, because he would go, bam, I hit him for damage, and then he heals half of it. Bam, I hit him for damage, and then he heals 3/4 of that. Bam, I hit him for and like it would just go back and forth, and it was like, okay, this is turning into that attrition problem that I don't like with D&D. Where basically you just sit there and whack on the thing until it dies, right? Like that's the thing that's the part of D&D that I don't like. That's what bores me the most, which is why Maximum Apocalypse has a different combat systems, because I didn't want to follow the okay, whack, somebody dies, you know. I just didn't like that, so I changed it. But like that's what the original was, and I was like, man, I was specifically trying to avoid that, so I had to go back and like scratch all those rules and start over with the combat system, which then created the system that I have.
I'm sure there's quite a few things that got scrapped and went back.
Oh, yeah.
Were there any things you scrap? Anything do you have a scrap bin of things that are like this? This is good. It's just not good here.
I have a whole bunch of old versions of the games, like a folder called old, and it's just like every time like I do a new version, I just take the old version and I drop it in the old folder. So I don't know how many files are in there, but like lots.
Yeah.
But there are things that I pulled out and put into a specific like document where it's like save for later stuff that I pulled out. Some of it's lore related, some of it's like the stuff about like, you know, where aliens come from. We pulled that out of the game. I was like, that would be fun for a campaign book later. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that aside and hold it in case we need it. But then some of it's like, this is a really cool rule. It doesn't work with Maximum Apocalypse, but it's a really cool thing. So I'm going to set that aside and use that later somewhere. And in that little zine that I was talking about, one of those rules popped up and came in. So I was like, that's where you'll see it. Because it worked out there just fine. It worked great there. Yeah.
So, have you begun trying to pitch Mike on a Rock Manor RPG wing?
No, but hey, now that you bring that up, hey Mike, we might want to create like a wing of Rock Manor where we just make RPGs. I'm just saying, we could make it. I already started to mention. I slowly hinted. I was like, you know, we could use these same rules for like Brass Empire. I mean, what is brass if not component pieces? Just saying. So like, you know, and like this maximum space thing he's testing. I'm like, tell me more, right? We could probably make like use the core rules for Maximum Apocalypse and apply it to a couple of different board games that he has.
Okay.
And so yeah, we could easily make like RPG versions of all of his games. I don't think that'd be hard. Between Todd and I think we could probably pull it off. And especially because Setawatch, man, like that's basically like, you know, D&D, but like you know how there's like so many different versions of like fantasy role playing out there. In fact, I think there's a game called literally fantasy role playing out there. Yeah. We could make a version of our own fantasy version of Setawatch, the Setawatch RPG. I'm sure we could do that just fine.
And the trick to that would be making it so it's not just like another version of D&D because it's essentially based off of D&D.
It's basically D&D. It's D&D the board game, to be fair. But it has its own cool, like, unique aspects that make it fun to play. Like the whole Setawatch, like the concept of like somebody's on watch, so they can't participate in the combat, you know, thing.
Sadly, no Barricades RPG. That's a different company. So
Yeah, that's a different company, unfortunately.
no cybernetic lumberjacks.
Yeah. Though, hey, I have an idea. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, we could
Big
easily-
Timberfell meets Robot Uprising.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Well, with that, we are at the hour mark, and it is time to head on out of here. Final words before we go?
Yeah, I should have thought of any, but I didn't think of any. I guess I'll end with like, hey, listen, if you like post-apocalyptic RPGs, you like games where you get to do stuff no matter what, whether you're in combat or whether you're out of combat, and you get to be interactive with everything. Check out Maximum Apocalypse, the RPG. It's at Kickstarter. You know, if you don't like it, that's fine, but there's things for everybody to like in this game, and so it's really fun. You should try it out. Watch the live plays. Go to Nerdarchy, watch their videos, see how well we did there, and if you think you like it, back it. We've got 6 days left.
Yeah, well, for sure. I know we had fun playing with it, and everyone I've talked to that played it so far has had fun with it. So thank you for coming on. It was great to talk with you.
Me on.
And until next time, people, stay nerdy.